Because when you walk into a TV studio, they actually look pretty shabby. You know, the desks are all scratched and they look pretty terrible. And then they flick the lights on.
So one thing that I keep mentioning is the importance of the background, and that will be our next and final chapter. So tell us a little bit how you managed to have such an amazing background.
Well, I've had a bit of a play with my background because I think the background is as important sometimes as the foreground in the perception it creates. Now, the first thing I did was I had a TV and I got one of those stands that you see in conference rooms and I raised it up and then I stood next to it and did it that way. And then I sort of moved into my kind of home office properly. And then what I decided to do with the background, I thought, well, okay, if you look at a TV studio, and I've been in lots of TV studios in my life, what's the difference between what they do and what most backgrounds are? Because when you walk into a TV studio, they actually look pretty shabby. You know, the desks are all scratched and they look pretty terrible. And then they flick the lights on. And they often have like a screen behind and they've got some nice colored lighting and everything. And I thought, well, how can I do that? So what I've done is I have an ancient TV, which is, probably, I think, maybe 12, 13 years old or something. And I have a monitor, old computer monitor. So what I've done is I have an old Mac Mini computer, and I just put a slide up. So whatever I'm doing, whatever the branding of that training, that presentation, that podcast, whatever, I put that on the Mac Mini on a slide, and then I get a splitter. So one HDMI goes into these two screens. So then these screens are now showing something kind of branded, as if you were in a studio of some kind. The next thing I did was say, well, okay, how can I make the lighting a little bit more interesting? So lots of the lighting is actually using smart bulbs. So, the smart bulbs that, you can get Alexa or something to turn them on and off, and you can use an app to change the color. Well, I've got a lamp with a very, very, again, that lamp's probably like 20, 25 years old. In there is a bulb, and it's a smart bulb. So I can, with my phone app, I can change the color of that bulb. I've got other sort of uplighters and things. So that's just lighting. So you could literally go into a room, maybe even close the curtains, because if you've got a ring light, you can control the light. So you're well lit, but then don't forget to light your background. Have you got any lamps? Have you got any uplighters? Have you got something you could put a colored bulb in just to add something to it? And then, like I say, have you got any screens? So lots of the things I've got in the background are kind of props from things I've done in the past. So there's one of those light boxes, where you can change the letters. And it's almost like the old-fashioned cinemas at the front, where they would put the different letters on to say what film was on. I got one of those to add a bit of light. So everything I'm doing in the background is really just to give it a bit of light and a bit of color. So it depends on what branding you're wanting to do behind you. But what I don't like are when people just use the fake zoom backgrounds, because they don't work very well with the edges of your hair. So they don't look very good.
I do
Now,
look
green
very
screen's
good,
a different
though,
matter.
because I have
You're
very sharp edges on my head, no hair.
well, that's the thing. But with a zoom background, with a zoom background, even no matter what you look like, because it's guessing where you end. So if you are going to use a fake zoom background, at least put up a green backdrop. And again, green backdrops are very, very cheap now. But when it comes to green screen, it's all about lighting. So if you've got your nice ring light in front of you, giving a nice soft light, then actually a green screen might work okay for you. In which case, having a different background might work okay. So I'm not against green screen, but remember the trick with green screen is the lighting. You've got to have some nice, even, soft light on it, and then it will work. If you have a bad lighting, then when it tries to figure out what is green and what's not, you get patches and you get flickering and it looks really terrible. So that's why I've not gone with green screen. I've gone with a physical background. So, it's a bookshelf and whatever. And my next challenge, like I said, I'm going to make this a standing setup just because I'm getting fat by sitting down all day. So my next challenge is to kind of almost like find a way to raise all this, because at the moment I can just put it on a table or a chest of drawers and it's the right height for just behind me. But if I'm standing up, it won't be. So now I need to think about getting a higher table or a higher bookshelf behind me so that those screens will be at the right length behind me. But I mean, if you were to actually go onto the internet and search for what TV reporters have been doing and TV anchors during the COVID lockdowns, what a lot of them have done is just got a giant TV at home and put that right behind them, and that's their background.
Absolutely.
So, you know, it doesn't need to look good in real life. It just needs to look good in this little square. So all around me are like boxes and it's a complete mess, but just this little square looks nicely lit and there's some color and detail in the background. So the background, you want a bit of depth. Try not to have the background right behind you, and try and have a bit of detail in there. So depending on what, let's say you're doing a podcast and you're doing a podcast about sport, maybe have a bookshelf with some sports memorabilia behind you and a nice light, and maybe, you know, an old computer monitor or old TV, and put your logo on there. It doesn't take a lot to make this little tiny frame look a little bit more professional.
But what is really important is the lens that you are using to make that background blurry, and that won't work with the webcam like the Logitech Brio that you're using, because everything will be crystal clear. So you need to use that camera that you were mentioning before.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a big space behind you, with a webcam even, you'll get a little bit of that blur, but the lens does that. The other thing the lens does is most webcams are very wide angle. So what they do is they show you pretty much the whole room, whereas these lenses like this actually kind of almost, if you think almost like a, you know, a telescope when you're kind of narrowing down what you're looking at. By doing that, I'm not showing the whole room. I'm not showing the sides. I'm not showing, you know, my tripod chucked up against the wall there. So all I need to worry about is this little square. So that's why the lens can make a huge difference. But saying that, a very, very popular but very expensive lens among kind of high quality podcasters and live streamers is called the Sigma 60mm. And that one is about like €300. And that one, literally, you could put it right in front of you to the point where it's virtually touching your nose, and your framing will look good. Your background will be blurry. But again, that's like €300 or so. So yeah, you do not need to spend a fortune, but just think about, if you're worried about the video quality, get the lighting right, get the camera to the right height. And then if you can, try not to use a bog standard webcam, try to get a mirrorless or a DSLR, which you may already own, and get that working as a webcam. And then suddenly your shot will look that little bit more glossy. The background will be that little bit more blurry, and, you know, people will notice.
Yeah, and obviously, so for those who are watching these videocasts on YouTube, you will find all the links and the description of the products that we have mentioned during the podcast in the description. That being said, thank you so much, Mark, for that wealth of information, of advice. And hopefully, many people who are watching today will be able to improve their skills and get to the next level in terms of podcasting and videocasting. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. It's been fun.